Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto surprises everyone by hiding his weaknesses? Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. A person clad in dark gray was rushing from one shadow of a house to another shadow. Nobody noticed as the person was fast. Nothing could be noticed that would identify the person. Just as it was the intention of said person. If he would be identified, there would be massive accusations about him doing something illegal. Which would only result in him getting dragged to the old man again. No, he had other plans tonight. The empty streets of his home village, he used the term home very loosely, were working well for his plans. Finally he reached his hideout. He pressed a stone in a wall and said wall glided aside soundlessly, the wonders of silencing seals, and let him in. As soon as he had walked inside, the wall slid back, pretending nothing of interest could be found there. The person lit a lantern and now features could be identified. The person was about 1 meter and 50 in height, slim, male and wearing dark gray pants that were taped with black bandages at the ankles and a long-sleeved gray shirt that was kept in place with gray arm guards. He wore black gloves with dull metal plates on the back. His head was hidden by a hood and a mask that only left his eyes uncovered. Now he pulled of the mask from his lower face and the hood down. Spiky yellow hair was revealed as were 3 whisker-like birthmarks on the boy's cheeks. He walked down the stairs behind the disguised door and reached a room after 5 minutes of walking down. He lit the lights and now the whole room was visible. The room was massive. It was rectangular and divided in 6 parts by shoulder-high walls. Only one part was closed up completely, the one on the far left. 4 parts were about the same size and 2 were double their size. He walked over to a wall in one of the smaller parts and took 3 sealing scrolls out of his pouch on his belt. He unrolled one scroll that was labeled with weapons, and began unsealing the contents. Several shuriken and kunai, 1 short sword, 2 katanas, 4 kodachis, a chain sickle, a container with senbons, 2 windmill shuriken and 4 daggers were taken out of the sealing scroll and placed, sorted by kinds, in a shelf where other weapons were stored. The bigger weapons like the swords in various sizes went on the wall next to the shelf. Then the boy walked to another shelf in the neighboring part, which was loaded with scrolls of different kinds. The single shelves were labeled with the category of the information in the scrolls. One shelf had a sign for water, one for wind, one for fire, one for earth and one for lightning. Then there were non-elemental, taijutsu, kenjutsu, fuinjutsu, clan techniques, politics and noble families, geography, survival, and strategy. He again unsealed the contents of the second scroll and sorted the scrolls he took out into the respective categories. He would need to look them over later, but now he had other things to do. The last scroll he took out revealed to hold bags that jingled when they were moved. There were coins in them. Other bags rustled. There were bills in them. He stored the money in the bags in a safe next to the shelf with the scrolls. A good haul tonight, the boy said to himself. I really like Chunin exams. I always get many new supplies that way. He went to the part that was on the farthest right side of the room. There was a small bathroom with a shower, a sink, a toilet and a bathtub in the back part and a kitchen in the front part. He turned the shower on and while he waited for the water to get warm he undressed. He tested the water and then stepped under the shower. He enjoyed the warm water for some time before he took the shower foam and cleaned his body. When he had washed it off, he shampooed his hair. Once he was clean, he turned off the water, walked out of the shower and took a towel from a stand. He dried his body and his hair before putting on night clothes. The part opposite the bathroom, the one completely separate from the rest of the room, was a bedroom with furniture he had made himself. He had a wardrobe, a bed, a night table and chest of drawers. The carpet, the blanket, the pillows and the mattress he had bought under a transformation jutsu. Nobody, Not even the old man Hokage knew about this hideout. While it was underground and therefore no natural light got inside, it was safe. A fact no other place in the whole village could claim to be for the boy. The least of all his official residents. Well, if anybody would look for him, they would only find a shadow clone of his lying in the bed, pretending to be him. It was a really big stroke of luck that he had the habit of observing the true genin tests of the Jonin senseis. 3 years ago, when he had been 9, he had watched a strange Jonin with spiky silver hair and a face mask like his, who only had one eye unveiled of his whole face, using the jutsu. First he had thought it was the normal clone the academy taught, but it was different as the clone could attack like the original. He had seen the hand seal the Jonin used and then begun training the jutsu. Shadow clone jutsu had become his favorite jutsu. First, he could do much more with the support of shadow clones. Second, he had found out after 2 weeks after finally managing to do the jutsu, that whenever one of his clones dispelled, he and the other clones got the memories of the dispelled clone. It had helped him in his training immensely. The village was completely against him, that much he knew since he was a little boy. There were perhaps a handful of people that didn't hate him outright. He didn't know how often he had been in the hospital because of their hatred. But he had found ways to avoid it. He knew the only way to not be beaten up anymore was getting stronger than the ones who beat him. He didn't care if he hurt them anymore. Those who attacked him were going to pay. But getting strong didn't happen overnight, and he also needed to cover all his bases to not be executed on orders of the council, his biggest enemies in the village. He had found out the reason for their hatred 5 years ago. He had become smarter after stealing scrolls and books from old, unused storages in the academy. In his mind it wasn't wrong what he did, it was simply to survive in this screwed up village. While the Hokage was one of the few that didn't hate him and protected him, otherwise he was sure he would already be dead, he was too old and tired to do his job properly. He, Naruto Uzumaki, or rather Namikaze, even if nobody knew he had figured that out, was the container of the Kyuubi, the 9-tailed fox that had attacked the village on the day he had been born. And for some reason the whole village had been informed about that fact and hated him for the connection with the fox. As if he had chosen to become the container of that demon. But no, they saw him as the fox. Stupid bastards. Even he with his self-taught knowledge in sealing knew that he and the fox were two separate entities. One day when he had been cleaning the storage rooms in the Hokage Tower after a prank, his only real way to show his frustration with the village, he had found a box with the kanji for 4th on it. He had freed the box of dust when a badly placed nodashi fell from an upper shelf and nicked his arm. Some of the blood from the wound dropped on the seal that kept the box closed, and the seal opened much to Naruto's surprise. He quickly bandaged the wound on his arm with the already ruined sleeve of his jacket and then opened the box. He found a few personal things the Yondaime had left. A marriage certificate and his own birth certificate which stated that his parents were Minato Namikaze and Kushina Namikaze ne Uzumaki. He had been shocked to find that out, but knew he only would have this one chance to see if his father and mother had left him something. For some reason the Hokage had lied to him that he didn't know who his parents were. He was hurt that the old man had lied to him and decided to not tell him that he knew now. In the box were some documents for bank accounts. He saw that he should have inherited quite a fortune, the deed to a bit of land on the outskirts of Konoha. He would check the place out later, he decided, and some pictures of his parents, those he took and hid them on his body. He guessed that if there was still a house left, much would be kept there. Checking out the place had been a really good idea. He found a small house, only the ground floor, first floor and a basement, but it was obvious that the one responsible for the interior had chosen it with love to detail. Finding the house had been difficult as it had been hidden with seals again, no wonder with his dad's reputation as a genius, but after 4 hours of searching he had found the seal that led him inside. He found a small shelf of jutsus, many notes on sealing with the Uzumaki spiral on them, a book about the Uzumaki clan of Whirlpool Country and one about the Namikaze clan of Fire Country. By now he had read the 2 books and knew his clans' histories. It made him all the more resentful towards Konoha's general population. He should have been treated like royalty. Even if he would have been happy enough to be treated like everybody else. From the book of the Namikaze clan he found out that the daughter of the Nadaime Hokage had married the heir of the Namikaze clan, which made his father the grandson of the Nadaime and himself his great-grandson. The Shodai was his great-granduncle. The only Hokage he wasn't related with was the Sandaime, and even the old man treated him like a second grandson. He was also related to the Shodai's wife, Mito, who had been born in Uzumaki and married Hashirama Senju in a political marriage to strengthen the bonds between Konoha and Uzushio more than the distant relationship between the Senju and the Uzumaki already did. Mito Uzumaki had been his mother's grandaunt. He also had found both his parents' journals, which informed him that since Mito, it had always been an Uzumaki who contained the Kyubi. His mother had written how she had come to Konoha to take over for the old Mito. How she hadn't been ostracized for the foxes nobody but the Sandaime and the highest advisors knew of it. Why the hell hadn't they done the same for him? Why let the villagers know that he was a Jinchuriki? It made no sense. He lifted the blanket of his bed and climbed into the bed. He lay down after setting the alarm clock. He looked at the picture of his parents on the nightstand and smiled. He would have to be at the academy the next morning and he didn't want to get too much unwanted attention. While he maintained the image of an idiot, it was simply safer to let the villagers think he wasn't a threat until he was ready to just give them hell. He didn't skip classes unless he was thrown out. It had been the constant attempts on sabotage that had him develop his resentments against the village. If he could only get away, but he knew that wouldn't be allowed and he couldn't escape the Anbu. No, he first needed to get to that level. Let them all underestimate him. As long as the Hokage kept the worst attacks at bay, he would persevere. There hadn't been any serious attacks in 5 years. Logical as the most vicious attackers had always been the Uchiha. But with them controlling the military police, there had been nothing done against them. Officially, if one of the attackers had been caught, they had been disciplined, but unofficially he knew that they got away with it. He had been one of the few people to be happy about the Uchiha massacre. In his opinion, Itachi Uchiha had done a good deed killing them all. And he himself had also profited. He had already found his current hideout 3 weeks prior to the Uchiha massacre. It had been a big coincidence. He had run from another mob of drunken villagers when he had been looking for a hiding place in the narrow alley. He had leaned against the stone that activated the mechanism. With the stone being really low in the wall, it was no wonder that the place hadn't been found already, and had fallen back into the dark corridor, only for the wall to slide back. At first he had panicked in the dark, then he had calmed down and lit a match to see where he was. The lantern had been there already and he had lit it to explore the place. The whole underground room had been packed with some creepy things. He had thrown most of them out after getting over his queasy stomach, and many useful things. Some of the things were horrible. Like body parts in glasses with some fluid to preserve them. Thankfully those had been really few. Perhaps 10 or so. The other things were much more useful to him. A shelf with some jutsu scrolls, some weapons, medical equipment, medical scrolls, information on poisons and the said poisons in bottles, and some machines he was pretty sure were used for torturing people. The machines were now stored in the second part of the room on the left side. He stored all the things he didn't really need there, but didn't want to throw away. Who knew when something could be useful, even if he didn't know if he would ever go into T&I. The night after the Uchiha massacre, he had sneaked into the empty compound and had looked for any leftover scrolls or weapons he could add to his possessions in the secret room. He had found quite a lot of them, even if it could be nowhere near the whole amount of jutsus that the Uchiha had possessed. He had a big sack with him and put them all inside. There was no way he would leave that kind of knowledge behind for the bastard village to profit from when the Uchihas in his opinion had to make up a lot to him. Thankfully no guards were placed around the compound so it was easy to sneak in there. They were all busy with hunting the culprit. In that night he had got 27 scrolls with jutsus of all kinds. Most were fire jutsus. He didn't want to risk getting caught by accident and returned to his hideout. Over the coming weeks he had gone to the Uchiha compound twice more, but the cleaning crews had obviously already collected the remaining good things. Well, he had got a good haul himself and now had a lot of jutsus he could learn. With the scrolls of the hideout, his stolen scrolls and books from the academy and the Uchiha scrolls he learned a lot about taijutsu. The medical scrolls came in very handy as they explained where a body was most vulnerable, genjutsu, he sucked in that area in the beginning, and ninjutsu. He soon realized that his main problem was chakra control. He had so much chakra and so little control that it messed with his jutsus at the academy. Thankfully there was a scroll that described all known chakra control exercises with the medical scrolls. He was really grateful to have found this place. While the previous owner had to be a creep, he obviously had also been a good shinobi. Since then Naruto had trained in the secret room, learned how to prevent the villagers overcharging him, mainly by hunting in the woods for meat and fish, collecting edible plants and growing some vegetables on a small field he had started 4 miles away from the village in a part of the woods no normal ninja came usually along. The civilians didn't leave the main roads if they traveled outside of Konoha so his hidden field was safe. He worked out in peace. He knew the exercises by spying on genin teams which were trained by their jonin senseis, trained his weapon techniques as well as it was possible without a training partner, worked through the chakra control exercises and started on low-level ninjutsu. It was morning and Naruto got ready for the next day of torture. He hated having to pretend being an idiot. He should be praised as a genius. He knew he could beat all the chunin in the village by now and most of the jonin. The only ones he was not so sure about were the elite jonin, the Anbu and of course the Hokage. He was just 12 after all and while he was strong and had more physical power than all other kids his age, including the boy that imitated Gaimeta, the best taijutsu master of the village, he was limited in what his body could take. He had the advantage that the Kyuubi healed his injuries overnight, which included his muscles that tore from training. Over the last year he had prepared massively for his chances to get out of the village on missions. It was the last year he would be a civilian. He had played with the idea to graduate early, but his chances were better with his age group. Being the son of the Yondaime Hokage he would have to be able to defend himself against enemies of his father that could recognize him. After some time he had come to the conclusion that that probably was the reason for the lies of the Hokage. The old man always tried to protect him, but didn't have that much success. The civilian council had too much political power for the old man to control all parts of the village life. And before he wasn't a ninja, he wouldn't be under the Hokage's power. While the Hokage as his official guardian was always included in his punishments for the pranks, mostly the civilian council tried to screw him over there again. And with the ninja part of the council being mostly neglecting him, there was no chance for him to get back at the civilian council right now. Thankfully the graduation exams were in 2 days. Then he would finally get out of the academy, get a jonin sensei and could start to show his abilities. Well, depending on the jonin, but he normally could trust the old man to not set him up with another demon hater. There were some jonin that would at least treat him neutrally. He left the room and turned off the lights. He took the lit lantern and walked up to the entrance. There was a spy hole in the wall to let him check if there were any people outside, but nominally the narrow alley was empty. There were after all no house entrances in the alley and it was too narrow to really store things. A few trash cans were at one end, but that was it. He opened the wall and stepped out. He was wearing the orange abomination that the only shop owner that had even sold him clothes had thought appropriate clothes for him. Of course he had been overcharged, but the next night he had taken the things he had paid for with the money that had been demanded from him illegally. He always did this. If one shop owner overcharged him or kicked him out, he took what the shop owner owed him or pranked the shop that kicked him out. Of course, nobody knew about his compensation. The council would have a field day. But as nobody could prove anything and they never found any of the stolen things in his possession, they had no case and the Hokage had refused to let them punish him without proof. Since the day he had learned shadow clones, he had sent a shadow clone to pretend to train on a training ground every day. His clone pretended to really suck but to never give up. The only true thing about his personality he showed the village was the never give up attitude. Everything else was faked. Naruto reached the academy and sat down in the back of the room, laying his head on the table and trying to get a bit more sleep. Nobody would really mind it. The only teacher that tried to get him to pay attention was Iruka Yumino. Naruto knew that Iruka also disliked him for the fox, but the Chunin was at least professional enough to not let it influence his work. For that attitude alone Naruto respected Iruka. He didn't like him, but he respected him. Naruto woke up again when the class's top Uchiha fangirls, Sakura Haruno and Ino Yamanaka, had their daily loud entry. Really? All that effort for an emo whose only ambition in life was to kill Itachi. And the bastard wasn't even that strong. Sure, for an academy student he was strong, but with all the help he had been offered by several ninja in the village he should already be Chunin by now. He could have graduated 2 years ago if he had chosen so, but he didn't. Naruto knew that Sasuke wasn't as good a ninja as his older brother had been and would never be. Itachi was a rare genius. Smart and powerful. It didn't happen often that those two traits came together in somebody as young as Itachi had been when he graduated. Genin with 7, Chunin with 10, Jonin with 12 and Anbu Captain with 13. That was an impressive record. Sasuke was too obsessed with revenge to reach his full potential. His hatred of Itachi was holding him back. While he trained a lot, he focused on the things his clan had taught him before they were all killed. Which meant, he had a solid understanding of the Uchiha Taijutsu style, which depended on the Sharingan, which Sasuke didn't have activated yet. He also knew AC rank Fire Jutsu, the Great Fireball Jutsu, which Naruto knew the Uchihas had really liked using, when they could get away with it also on him. Sasuke was top in his academics, the basic 3 ninjutsu taught at the academy and with his thrown weapons. But the whole talking about beating Itachi one day lacked his skills in anything outside that knowledge and skill. He didn't know Genjutsu, which even Naruto, after thousands of collective hours of chakra control training, that had become so much easier with shadow clones, had been able to learn. Didn't have a weapon besides the standard kunai and shuriken he had learned to use in combat. Naruto had chosen to follow the Sandame's example and learn to use a bow staff and also knew how to use a tanto as a backup weapon. He knew nothing about seals, a skill Naruto in the ambition to follow in his parents' footsteps had mastered by now, and his usage of other tools was lacking massively. No, while Sasuke was skilled for a normal ninja of his age, he was far from a genius. That title was given away way too easy nowadays. The Hyuga genius Neji of last year, Sasuke of this year, and probably the other years had also had a genius in them. Naruto hadn't really cared about it. Now the two cat-fighting girls tried to solve the matter who would be allowed to sit next to their crush. What else was new? If they would have looked they would have noticed that there were 2 seats next to the bastard. And said emo didn't even give them any attention. He just brooded as always. Finally Iruka arrived and sent both girls to seats away from Sasuke and started with repetition for the exams. Naruto would do what was necessary to pass the test, but not much more. He wanted to score low to be put on the same team as Sasuke, the only one that would be guaranteed to be passed. There was simply no way that the precious Uchiha would be allowed to fail his true Genin exam. And to keep him happy he would be assigned a strong Jonin that could teach him a lot. Well, With Naruto's perfected espionage skills, he would get the same advantages once he got the team to pass. He knew a bit about the Jonins that normally took on teams. To pass a test, he would only have to know which one he got as a sensei and act accordingly. He even knew what Kakashi Hatake, the strange Jonin he had copied the shadow clone jutsu from, wanted from his teams. The man was a great believer in teamwork. Not that hard to achieve, if he got the emo to cooperate to pass. The jutsu they were repeating today was the transformation. Well, Naruto had his own version which he used to embarrass Iruka. The sexy jutsu. A real transformation contrary to the normal illusion. Not that anybody knew about this difference. Naruto had created that jutsu to distract pursuers and knock them out. He swore the village was made of over 95% perverts. Iruka was blown back by a giant nosebleed. Naruto then took the safe option and fled the classroom where nearly all the girls wanted to castrate him for using such a jutsu in their presence. He went to Ichiraku's and ordered 7 bowls of ramen. While it was part of his mask, Naruto really liked the ramen at Ichiraku's. He disliked the packed ramen that the stores sold. He just had had too much of it when he was younger. It was the only food he could afford and cook with his limited skills. The ramen at Ichiraku's were better and healthier. He got some of the meat, fish and vegetables his body needed from here. While there was a lot of salt in the broth, with the Kyuubi's chakra helping keeping him healthy, there was not much to fear. He had started hunting and fishing 2 months after finding the secret room, which gave the fox more nutrients to work with. His vegetable field then added to his diet once his efforts to grow vegetables bore fruit. Naruto learned how to live of the land. With the mild climate in Fire Country, he didn't have to fear about massively cold weather that would make it impossible to grow things. He also collected nuts and fruits from the trees and bushes in the forest to add to his diet. It showed in him finally having a growth spurt. When he had started at the academy, he had been one of the smallest children in class. Once he turned 9, he was one of the tallest. Understandable when he saw the pictures of his father. Minato Namikaze had been tall. While getting fresh milk and eggs had been a bit of a problem in the beginning, once he had mastered the transformation jutsu, that problem had been solved. He went to buy the things he needed and couldn't hunt or grow in disguise and got them without a problem. He didn't buy everything he needed because he didn't want to give the people that hated him his money. He could do better things with them, like waiting for the merchant caravan that came to Konoha twice a year and buy the things he wanted from them. He had bought his new outfit, one that he would use once he became a ninja, during their last visit. In 1 week and 2 days, the day when the teams were assigned, he would present it the first time. Finally, it was the day of the graduation exams. Naruto answered just enough questions correctly to pass this part and not get in trouble if he didn't do too well on the ninjutsu part. He didn't know how the teachers would take his clone jutsu. Weapon throwing and taijutsu he did average in. It was okay for him to beat a student from a civilian family with his street brawler style. He wouldn't reveal that he was proficient in both the Uzumaki and the Namikaze taijutsu styles. That would wait until he was sure nobody could screw him over anymore. Then it was time for the last part. Iruka announced that they would have to show the clone jutsu. Naruto sighed. This was definitely another attempt of the council to screw him over. It was well known that he was lousy at this jutsu. But with all his control training, he would be able to deceive them. He went into the room where Iruka and Mizuki were waiting to test him on the jutsu. Naruto, who wanted to graduate, concentrated hard to reduce the amount of chakra he used to the least possible amount he could manage. Clone jutsu. He shouted and a cloud of smoke appeared. When the smoke cleared, there were 20 Narutos that could just be called proper clones. The coloration was a little bit too weak, but they were workable clones. Naruto breathed out in relief. Iruka would accept this, even if it wasn't perfect. Well, that's a surprise, Naruto. There was no need to make so many clones. Iruka said, surprised that Naruto had managed to do the jutsu. He had never got it down before. Well, Iruka-sensei, I trained really hard for this jutsu and somehow this is the least possible amount of clones I can make and it is still really hard. Naruto said, rubbing his head embarrassedly. Damn that demon brat. This is an acceptable result. Iruka will pass him now and I can forget my plan to use him to steal the scroll. I was sure he would fail. Mizuki mentally ranted. You definitely improved a lot. You pass, Naruto, even if you should still continue to work on this jutsu until you can make your clones perfect. They need a little bit more color. Iruka commented and held out a headband. Will do, Iruka-sensei, thanks. Naruto said, not even faking his happiness for graduating. During the night Naruto was out to see if some stupid clan had thrown away old scrolls again. Really, for all the talks about keeping clan jutsus a secret, they were pretty lax with the scrolls that had their secret jutsu and sometimes training techniques in them. Whenever the scrolls got too old to be used anymore, the clans had somebody copy the content of the scrolls and then threw away the old ones. Instead of burning them directly, they threw them into the trash. Naruto, ever the opportunist, regularly searched the trash cans the day before the trash was collected and destroyed. That was the day the clans threw away those scrolls. Over the years since he had started to do this to even out the advantage the clan ninjas had on him, he had collected quite a lot of scrolls. Naruto now knew perfectly how to fight members of all clans in Konoha. He even could use the gentle fist. It was fairly easy with his vast knowledge of anatomy. While he couldn't see the chakra network without the Byakugan, a chakra strike to a vital organ or a muscle was still fatal for an opponent. And it added to his unpredictable taijutsu. After all, nobody would expect a non-Hyuga to know gentle fist. But before he could do his little raid, he got suspicious of a figure that left the Hokage Tower with a big scroll on his back. He decided to investigate. He made a shadow clone to continue his trash raid. There was no reason to not do both after all. He stayed in the shadows, his chakra suppressed to not alert the man he followed to his presence. Once he reached a clearing in the forest, the man stopped to gather his breath. That went well. It would have been better if I could have blamed the demon brat, but with the brat passing the exams that plan got blown up. He mumbled. Naruto recognized the voice as the one of Mizuki, his teacher at the academy. So he had planned to trick him into stealing the scroll he had with him. It had to be important that he would risk the theft from the Hokage Tower. Naruto sneaked closer and positioned himself over Mizuki, ready to take him out. While Naruto was tailing Mizuki, the Hokage noticed that the forbidden scroll had been stolen and raised the alarm. Many were accusing Naruto, but an Anbu informed them that Naruto was sleeping in his bed at home. The Hokage sent his ninja out to find the thief and bring back the scroll. Iruka, who had taken to search in the forest west of Konoha, was really surprised to find Mizuki with the scroll. Never would he have thought his old friend would do something like this. Iruka didn't notice Naruto in the tree. Mizuki, what are you doing? He shouted enraged. Oh, look who found me, Iruka. What does it look like? I am taking the scroll to become more powerful than I could ever become in this shitty village. Once I have learned the jutsus in it, I will be invincible. Nobody will be able to stop me and I will then sell it to the highest bidder. He said. Sadly I can't have you tell my little secret, so you sadly have to die. Mizuki attacked Iruka with a windmill shuriken, which Iruka managed to dodge. The two started on taijutsu, where Iruka was definitely at a disadvantage. Oh, didn't the good little teacher keep up with his taijutsu training well enough? Mizuki mocked Iruka when he kicked him in the ribs and against a tree. Then he threw the next windmill shuriken at Iruka, who couldn't get up fast enough. But before the shuriken could hit, it was intercepted by a dark figure. Naruto had seen and heard enough to decide he wanted to thwart Mizuki's plans. And with his disguise there was no risk of being identified. Mizuki was shocked to see his attack didn't hit. Who the hell are you? What do you want? He yelled at Naruto. I hate traitors with a passion. That's all. Naruto said and threw the windmill shuriken he had caught before. It could hit Iruka back at Mizuki with a lot more speed than it had had before. Mizuki dodged the weapon. Ha! You missed. He mocked only to be hit from behind and feel the pain from being pierced by his own weapon. No, I didn't, Naruto calmly said, holding the end of a thread of ninja wire in his hand, which he had quickly tied to the windmill shuriken and therefore been able to pull the weapon back on a new course. He took out a senbon covered in a paralyzing poison and hit Mizuki in the neck with it. He passed out soon after from the blood loss. Iruka managed to get up, only holding his side a bit. Thank you for the help, he said. You saved my life. You're welcome. I think it would be best to get the scroll back to the Hokage. Can you walk on your own? Naruto asked. Yes, I think so. Only a few bruises, nothing serious, he said. By the way, who are you? I don't think I have seen you in the village before. That's a secret. If you want to have a name, you can call me Dark Phoenix. That's my codename, Naruto said. He had decided long ago that he would use that codename if he ever was seen. It was his best shot to be left alone if nobody knew what he could do. Dark Phoenix would be thought of as a secret operative of the Hokage and nobody would make the connection to Naruto Uzumaki, the demon brat. Oh, I understand, Iruka said. In a ninja village, people with codenames were nothing special. Hell, the Anbu only operated that way. While Dark Phoenix seemed to be really young, there had been others that strong at his age. Naruto bound Mizuki with wire and asked Iruka if he could carry him as he had the height advantage. They walked back to the village not being in a hurry after the culprit was caught and knocked out. And it would be easier on Iruka's bruises. Iruka was carrying Mizuki's knocked out body and Naruto had the scroll. When Iruka was briefly looking in another direction, Naruto quickly switched places with a previously made shadow clone. There was no chance he would pass the opportunity to copy the jutsus from the scroll. It wouldn't take long. Because of his sealing training, Naruto could write really fast. Just when they were getting to the edge of the forest, Naruto switched back. Nobody would ever know that he now had the forbidden jutsus of the village. The Hokage was really surprised to see an unknown ninja and Iruka Umino bringing back the scroll and having a knocked out and bound Mizuki Tsuji with them. The masked ninja walked over to him and handed him the forbidden scroll back. Then Iruka started to tell what had happened. Hokage-sama, I caught up with the thief, Mizuki, in the West Forest, and after he told me he had stolen the scroll to learn the forbidden jutsus and sell the scroll to the highest bidder. Once he had done that, I attacked him. Over the fight, Mizuki managed to beat me in taijutsu and I was kicked back into a tree. Mizuki didn't waste time to throw another windmill shuriken at me while I was down. I was sure that that would be my end when Dark Phoenix appeared and intercepted the windmill shuriken Mizuki threw at me. He then threw the windmill shuriken back at Mizuki, but he dodged. Mizuki gloated about having been missed, but Dark Phoenix had tied ninja wire to the shuriken and pulled it back where it hit Mizuki in the back. After that, he was knocked out by a senbon that was obviously covered in some poison. He bound him with more ninja wire and we came back here. Iruka reported. The Hokage was confused. He didn't have a ninja that went by the codename Dark Phoenix. But the boy was obviously strong and on their side. The scroll he had been given back was the original. So the boy didn't intend to steal it. Curious. He would have to ask the boy once they were alone. Thank you for the report and bringing back the forbidden scroll, Iruka. That was good work. I think it would be best if you went to the hospital and let them check you if there was anything worse than bruises done. I need you ready for duty, the Hokage said. Iruka bowed and left the room. The Hokage now turned his look to the boy. I would really like to know who you are. I don't know any ninja in my ranks with the codename Dark Phoenix. The Hokage said sternly. If you would send your Anbu guards out of the room, Hokage-sama, I will tell you. I don't want my identity be known to anybody but you. Naruto said politely. Why would I send my guards out for this if you could try to attack me? The Hokage asked. I may be strong, but I am sure you could take me out without problem, Hokage-sama. The only thing I require is a bit of privacy as I am about to reveal 2S-rank secrets of the village. Naruto said. The Hokage concentrated his senses on the boy. He felt his chakra being suppressed, so there was no way to get any clues about the boy's identity. What kind of village secrets could the boy know? Well, if he wanted to find out, he would have to take the risk. It was really small after all. He didn't become Hokage while being weak. He gave his guards the sign to leave the office. Once they were out of the office, he activated the privacy seals. So, now we are completely undisturbed. Now tell me who you are. He ordered. Naruto raised his hands slowly to not have the old man attack him and pulled down his lower face mask and his hood. My name is Naruto Namikaze, 3rd Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. He said seriously. To say the Hokage was shocked was an understatement. He had never even suspected that Naruto could know about those two things. Naruto, is that really you? He asked. Yes, old man. And if I hadn't figured out by now that having me use my dad's name would have got his enemies after me, I would be really pissed with you for lying to me whenever I asked one or both of the two questions I had all my life. Who my parents were and why the villagers all hate me. Naruto stated while clearly showing his displeasure to the Hokage. How do you know that? Who told you? The Hokage asked, furious that somebody would have broken his law. Well, I found out about the fox shortly before the Uchiha massacre. If I see Itachi, I will have to thank him for getting rid of my most brutal tormentors. They once caught me and beat me up in a lonely alley. When they left me there bloody and probably thinking that I was unconscious, they talked about how I deserved that because I was the Kyuubi container and should just die. They only didn't kill me directly because you would have found out and taken measures. About my parents I found out when I had to clean your storage room after that prank against the grocer in the north part of the village. I accidentally spilled blood on the seal that was keeping the box with the kanji for 4th on it closed. I looked into the box after the seal opened and found my parents' marriage certificate and my birth certificate. I found out about the location of their house and went there. Well, you can guess the rest of the information I told you. Like that I am the 3rd Jinchuriki for the fox when I say that I found both their diaries. Naruto explained. The Hokage looked sad. He hadn't wanted to burden Naruto with the knowledge of the fox at such a young age. You said you figured out my reason for keeping your heritage a secret. How comes you didn't do better at the academy then? From the reports I got, you just passed the exams. Congratulations for that, by the way. The Hokage wanted to know. Thanks, but think about it. What do the villagers fear more? A stupid and weak demon or a smart and powerful one? It was simply self-preservation. I am way stronger and smarter than everybody thinks. Naruto said. How strong? The Hokage asked. And how did you manage to keep all the training? You must have done a secret. I only saw you training sometimes in the training grounds and then you didn't give the impression of being strong. That was my shadow clone, old man. I learned that jutsu by watching Kakashi Hatake test his team when I was 9. He had them fight against his clone in the true genin test. I had memorized the hand seal and tried to learn that jutsu as it looked really useful, way better than the clone we learn at the academy, which I still have problems with even after thousands of hours of chakra control training. Naruto admitted. That damn jutsu just uses too little chakra. You can do shadow clone jutsu. You know that it is a forbidden jutsu? He asked. No, I didn't until now. I never had any problems except in the beginning when I dispelled too many clones after training at once. That was a terrible headache I got. You use your clones for training? The Hokage asked, interested. Sure. It's the best training method there is. At least for me. I can make 1,000 clones without ending winded. And with the memory transfer after they dispel, they were perfect for me to gain skills, experience and knowledge. Naruto said, shrugging his shoulders. But why didn't you tell me? The Hokage asked. I couldn't. If the council had any idea that I was getting strong on my own, they would have tried to stop me. I needed all the time I could get to get strong enough to just flip them the bird once I graduated. You know how they treat me. If I had shown my true skills, I would have been able to graduate earlier. That much I know you'd have done for me, but what then? A genin still isn't strong enough to be safe from a bunch of determined civilians, especially not if the council would try to make everything I did look like the fox did it. And there would have been the possibility of a Jonin just failing the team I was on under the pretense of us not having the necessary skills. Then it would have been back to the academy, under the control of the civilian council. And then they would have known that I was stronger than they allowed me to become and would have sabotaged me more. No, I needed to have at least high-level Chunin skills to be sure to pass the real genin test for sure. Are you then having a reason to keep me in the active duty roster even if the Jonin on my team failed me out of hatred for the fox? While I haven't been beaten up since the Uchiha massacre, the civilians do all they can to screw me over. Shops overcharge me or just deny me service, parents tell lies about me to their children, teachers sabotage my education, and the hospital staff only treats me if you force them to. Hell, the only place I can go to eat is Ichiraku's. And I can't live from ramen alone, even if I pretended to do so. Thankfully I don't get the food a clone eats. Alone thinking about eating so much ramen makes me sick. I hate cup ramen, by the way. I only like the ramen at Ichiraku's. Do you really wonder that I couldn't trust anybody until I was out of the influence of the civilian council? Now that I have graduated and am a ninja, I am under your jurisdiction and you are one of the few people that don't hate me. Naruto explained. The Hokage understood. He had tried to help Naruto, but he was right. With the council having stolen much of the Hokage's power in the short time between Minato's death and his reinstallation, there wasn't much he could have done for the boy without being accused of favoritism and pushed out of the position of Hokage, leaving Naruto without protection. When Naruto had been found next to the bodies of his dead mother and dying father, Minato had only managed to get his final wish out that Naruto should be treated like the hero he was for keeping the fox imprisoned. He hadn't told the villagers about Naruto's status, but it had somehow got out. His law came too late and the villagers were shouting for Naruto's death. You said you know about the true genin test? The Hokage asked, looking over his intertwined hands. Yes, my knowledge was also part of the reason I got results to just pass, at the bottom of my class. The only genin to be that is guaranteed to pass is Sasuke. The council will never allow for their precious last Uchiha to fail and order whoever will be his Jonin sensei to pass his team. That is the only possibility for me to surely pass. I know that Ino, Shikamaru and Choji will be put on a team as the three clans have had a bond over generations and are always on the same team if three of them are in the same graduation class. The next clan heirs are Hinata, Kiba and Shino. A classical tracking team, therefore they would normally be put in one team. Those six are the only ones in my class that also have the skill to pass the genin test for sure if they get fair senseis. So if I wanted to truly get out of the civilian council's jurisdiction, I needed to get on a team that was sure to pass, aka Sasuke's team. I hate the bastard, but I can push my feelings aside if it means you are the only one who can give me orders. To be honest, if I hadn't been sure that I would have been hunted down and brought back by the Anbu, I would have run away years ago. While I like you, with a whole village hating me, that was not a difficult decision. The Hokage seriously needed to make plans to get Naruto to stay in the village even after he would one day die. He was an old man. He knew that he would probably die before Naruto turned 18. He could understand the boy. He really could. But it was also important for the village to keep the Kyuubi there. And Naruto with his heritage shouldn't even think about leaving the village. This was all so screwed up. He had hoped that once the immediate grief for the fallen was over that people would get back to common sense. Sadly the civilian council never accepted it. I see. As you know your heritage, what do you intend to do? He asked. I will keep it secret until the next Chunin exams. By the way, why did Konoha get to host them 2 times in a row? Naruto asked. That question had bothered him for a while. I won't ask how you know that they had been in Konoha last time and will be next time in 6 months. We would normally only have hosted the next exams. It was Kusa's turn originally, but their village couldn't get the premises ready in time and then their leader fell ill. So they asked Konoha to take over as we have the possibilities to organize them quickly. The Hokage answered. Ah, I see. That makes sense. And even if you didn't ask, I will answer how I knew. I just noticed all the foreign shinobi in the village. The only reason for that amount was that we hosted the Chunin exams. Naruto explained. The Hokage nodded. That was logical. I have a request by the way. Can you make sure that my team is assigned a sensei that isn't a demon hater? To ask for someone that likes me would be too much to ask, but having at least a sensei that would treat me neutrally would be a huge improvement to the teachers at the academy. With the exception of Iruka sensei. While I know he doesn't like me, he was professional about things and taught me the same like everybody else. I can live with that. Naruto asked. I will see what I can do. What I would like to know how you came up with the codename Dark Phoenix. The Hokage asked. Well, a phoenix is a mythical bird that doesn't really die, but is always reborn from the ashes. Phoenixes are associated with the light and pureness. A dark phoenix also is reborn from the ashes when it dies, but it is not the same bird. It is more like a reincarnation instead of the rebirth of the same bird with the same character. I can't be pure, the village made sure of it, but I will not just die. I will rise from the ashes again and again and nothing they throw at me will keep me down. Naruto stated. The Hokage nodded. I think we still didn't settle the matter of your level of strength. What do you think where you would rank? The Hokage asked. Low to middle Jonin level on a pure skill level. I only miss the body for taking on high level Jonin. That will have to wait until I get older. I have seen pictures of Dad. I should normally get a similar stature like him when I grow up. Naruto replied. Are you sure about that? The Hokage asked shocked. Yes, I have a repertoire of over 100 ninjutsu, 10 genjutsu, which were a pain in the to learn by the way, damned fox messing with my control, I'm proficient in both my clans, taijutsu styles, I can use a bow staff and a tanto really well and know how to use most weapons at least a bit if I ever need to. I am a fuinjutsu master and a poisons and anatomy expert. I guess that should be more than enough to qualify for Jonin level strength. The only thing I lack is experience. That's why I said I was low to middle Jonin level on pure skill levels. I wouldn't last in a real fight against a Jonin yet if my opponent didn't massively underestimated me. I couldn't do any missions after all or I would have been discovered. Naruto listed. Fuinjutsu Master. I guess I shouldn't be surprised considering that both your parents were masters in Fuinjutsu and it was the specialty of the Uzumaki clan before they were killed in the Third War. I would like to test your skill level though. Probably the best way to do it would be if you fought against one of my Jonin in your disguise. He pondered. That would be okay, but I only want to reveal my skills to the whole village during the Chunin exams. I want them to see who they treated like shit. With all the nobles and important clients present, they can't risk being seen as the scum they are. Naruto stated. Okay. Be at Training Ground 61 tomorrow morning at 10. I will be there with the Jonin I have in mind to test your skills. The Hokage said, more than a little bit worried about the obvious loathing Naruto held for the majority of Konoha. Okay, old man, good night. Naruto said and put his mask and hood back on. Good night, Naruto, and this was really good work. You will be paid for your help in catching Mizuki. The Hokage added. Naruto lstood in his disguise at Training Ground 61 and was looking around. He was early by 15 minutes to have a look around. The training ground had been guarded by 2 Chunin, which meant it was special. Only the Anbu and Hokage training grounds were guarded. Naruto hadn't cared about the guarded training grounds before. The only one he had been interested in besides the open ones that were farthest away from the village had been Training Ground 44, better known as the Forest of Death. After each Chunin exam he had sneaked in there to see if he could find things that would help with his training, like weapons that were still usable, scrolls and money. He reasoned the dead didn't need them anymore. In the beginning he had felt slightly sick at doing it, but with the animosity he was shown by the villagers he needed some source of weapons, and those would only rust if they were left there for too long. So he had started when he was 9 to go into the Forest of Death when the second part of the Chunin exams was over. He had found out that it took at least 3 days before the cleaning crews went through the forest to get the remaining corpses. He guessed they had too much to do with organizational things. So he normally spammed the forest with his clones to find those that had died or other leftover weapons. Mostly they were perfectly workable still, some needed sharpening, but that was no problem. In 5 hours he normally was finished and had collected all the usable things. The only problem in the beginning had been the transport. He couldn't use sealing scrolls in the beginning. That had been the starting point in finding a way to easier transport weapons in the future. He had found in one of the books at the academy that there were sealing scrolls, but he knew he couldn't get one for him because the shopkeepers would never sell him one. So he needed to learn how to make one himself. It took him 3 months to find the necessary books about sealing and then training that specific seal, but he did it. 1.5 years later, when the Chunin exams were in Konoha again, he had the equipment and skill to seal weapons on site. His most prized find was a chakra-conductive tanto. Those weapons that could channel chakra were really expensive and rare. At 10 the Hokage came in company of a medic nin and nodded at Naruto. "Good morning, Dark Phoenix. Good to see you are on time. I have organized for one of my elite Jonin to test your skills. He should be here in 10 minutes. This is Arata, he will be on standby to heal you and your opponent if necessary." The Hokage explained. "Good morning, Hokage-sama." Naruto answered with a bow, keeping up his disguise. "That will be great. Who will be testing me?" he asked. "My son Asuma Sarutobi." The Hokage answered. Naruto nodded. He knew Asuma from some of his visits to the Hokage. While the bearded Jonin had been out of the village for some time to protect the Fire Daimyo as one of the 12 ninja guardians, he had returned some years ago and become a normal Jonin for the village. He waited with the Hokage and 9 minutes later Asuma arrived. "Good morning, Dad. Why did you call me here?" Asuma greeted. "Good morning, Asuma. Thank you for coming. You are here to assess the skill level of Dark Phoenix here. I have an overall idea what he can do, but there is nothing better than a fight to see what he can do in a real situation. From our estimation he should be around high Chunin to low Jonin level." The Hokage informed his son. "Dark Phoenix, never heard of him," he said, observing the boy. "He doesn't seem too old," he said. "No, he isn't. He has trained in secret to not gain unwanted attention of different fractions in the village," the Hokage said meaningfully. Asuma assumed he was talking about Root and the council that liked to manipulate young talented ninjas to their liking. "Okay. What kind of test do you want to have? An all-out fight or going by disciplines?" Asuma asked. "I think we should go by disciplines. Is that okay with you, Dark Phoenix?" the Hokage asked. "Of course, Hokage-sama," Naruto answered. "With which part should we start? I think I would like to see how you work with weapons first." Asuma himself is a skilled weapon user, so that would be a good starting point. Naruto nodded and unsealed both his tanto and his bow staff. The tanto went on his shoulder and the staff stayed in his hand. Asuma took out his knuckle knives. They watched each other, assessing the stance of their opponent. Then Naruto sprang into action and raced at Asuma. The Hokage was surprised by the speed Naruto showed. That was definitely Jonin level speed. The only Jonins to be faster would probably be Guy and Kakashi. Asuma was ready and blocked the strikes of the bow staff with his knives and fought back. Both weapons clashed time and again. Naruto tried to swipe Asuma's legs with his staff, but he jumped over it without problem. Both opponents evaded and blocked each other's attacks for 5 more minutes before jumping apart. You're definitely good kid, but let's take this up a notch. Asuma said and channeled wind chakra into his blades. Naruto, knowing that his staff wouldn't hold against wind-enhanced blades, quickly put his staff away and drew his tanto. He channeled his own wind chakra into it. So you are a wind element too. Interesting. Let's see how far you have come. Asuma said and attacked. Tanto and knuckle blades crashed and the more experienced Jonin managed to get a cut on Naruto's arm. Naruto returned the favor by spinning around his axis, disconnecting their weapons and nicking Asuma's pants. Not a bad counter to my attack. Asuma commented. This kid was really good. Judging by his height and stature, the boy was about 12 to 14. To be that good with 2 different weapons and being able to manipulate wind chakra was really something. Naruto returned with a new attack but was forced back by the stronger Asuma over the next minutes. Finally Asuma managed to disarm Naruto and crossed his blades close over his throat. My win. Asuma said and stepped back. Naruto nodded. He hadn't expected to be able to defeat an elite Jonin in one of his strongest disciplines, but he had held out better than he thought he would. That was an impressive start. Next would be taijutsu, the Hokage said. Asuma nodded and put his knives back in his hip pouch. He took his stance and saw that the boy was in a stance he didn't know and hadn't seen around the village before. He couldn't know that Naruto was in the opening stance of the Namikaze style, the cheetah style. The style was based on speed and fast attacks to vital points. It wasn't made for long exchanges like the animal it was named after. After Naruto had read all the anatomy scrolls in the secret room, he could utilize the style really well. And with his bastardized version of Gentle Fist and Chakra Scalpels mixed into the style, it was deadly if Naruto wanted it to be. This time Asuma attacked first, but Naruto dodged his kick and went around him in a split second and tried to attack the spine. Asuma though was too experienced and jumped to the side. Naruto followed him and looked for openings in Asuma's guard. His smaller stature now was an advantage for him as he could use openings easier as a bigger opponent. He brought in some painful hits to Asuma's biceps and upper thigh. Asuma was too good to let him hit vital spots after feeling what a hit did to his muscles. Naruto didn't let Asuma rest and used his superior speed to disable more points, which got more difficult as Asuma tried to stay out of his reach. Finally Naruto managed to cut a whole muscle in Asuma's left leg, which made him fall to his knees. Naruto came up and pointed his glowing hand to Asuma's spine. My win, he said and then stepped back. The Hokage was impressed. That was an impressive show of taijutsu skill. And that speed reminded him a lot of Minato. But Naruto seemed even better than his father at the same age. And how did he manage to get Asuma's muscles hurt? That looked like Gentle Fist, but Naruto couldn't know it. The Hyuga kept those secrets within their clan. Very good, Dark Phoenix. The next thing would be Genjutsu. The Hokage said. Wouldn't it have been better to let Kurenai test him there? I am not much of a Genjutsu user. Asuma said. Urata had appeared at Asuma's side and began healing his injuries. When he walked to Naruto he shook his head. I'm okay, he said and the medic went to the side. I don't think we would need a Genjutsu specialist. I don't want news about Dark Phoenix getting out too soon. Urata here is one of my personal medics and won't tell a thing. I only need to know how good he is at casting them and at dispelling a few lower level ones. I know you can do a B-rank Genjutsu. Asuma nodded. That B-rank Genjutsu was his highest level Genjutsu. It only worked if he got his opponent by surprise. But if his father only wanted to test if Dark Phoenix could break it, it would do. Naruto got ready. Okay. We will start with you starting to cast a Genjutsu at Asuma, Dark Phoenix. The Hokage said. Naruto nodded and went through hand seals at a fast pace. Illusion art. Pervert's paradise. He said. The Hokage waited for Asuma to get out of the Genjutsu, but instead he saw that Asuma had started to drool and only looked strangely happy. Then he sported a huge nosebleed and fell back, knocked out. What kind of jutsu was that? The Hokage asked Naruto, whom he swore was grinning brightly under his mask. The genjutsu shows him the woman he likes offering him to do whatever fetish he has. It works on nearly everybody. Naruto said innocently. How the hell did you come up with that jutsu? The Hokage asked baffled. Well, the same way I came up with that ninjutsu. Naruto said, stressing, that ninjutsu. The Hokage, knowing which one he meant, had to suppress a nosebleed himself. It was meant to be a distraction in case I was running away from others. And it isn't limited to men. It works with the general preferences of the one I catch in it. Naruto explained. I am impressed. Can you please wake up Asuma again, so we can continue? The Hokage asked Arata. The medic nodded and pushed his chakra into Asuma's system to break him out of the genjutsu. Asuma opened his eyes and saw his father, Arata and Dark Phoenix looking at him amused. Damn, that jutsu is really dangerous. You simply don't want to get out of it. Asuma commented, groaning. Now he was glad that Kurenai wasn't here. She would never forgive him. Thankfully nobody knew what his illusion had been. That would be a definite death sentence for him. Okay, let's get this over with. Let's see if you are as good as escaping from a genjutsu. Asuma said and went through his hand seals. Illusion art. Prison of silence. Asuma said. Naruto just stood there and wondered what the jutsu was supposed to do. When should the jutsu start to work, Asuma? He asked. It should already do it, can you hear me? Asuma asked. Yes, no problem. So I guess it should have messed up my hearing. Naruto guessed. Yes, it should. That's strange. It should have worked. I cast it correctly, I'm sure. Asuma wondered. Try another one, Asuma. The Hokage said. Illusion art. Hell viewing technique. Asuma announced, but Naruto still stood there wondering why nothing happened. Nothing. The Hokage asked. No, I know what the hell viewing technique should do, as I also know that jutsu, but I don't feel anything. Strange. I didn't even feel any foreign chakra reaching me. Naruto said. You can feel foreign chakra? Arata asked, interested. Yes, I'm a sensor type. Naruto said. That could be a reason. Let me test something. Arata said and activated his mystical palm jutsu. I will come closer with my hands to that cut you got in the weapons fight with Asuma. If I am right, something should stop me. Arata said. Naruto nodded and held out his arm. It was already healed by the Kyuubi, but he wouldn't inform Arata of that fact. In case he wondered, he could make up a minor bloodline for healing. Arata pushed his hands over the cut in Naruto's shirt and was stopped an invisible layer of chakra. I thought so. Young sensors sometimes place a thin layer of chakra over all of their skin to have it easier to use their sensor skills. A subconscious thing. That layer of chakra prevents foreign chakra like for genjutsus to enter the body. Therefore they are immune against lower level genjutsus. I guess a genjutsu specialist would still manage to get through, but nobody else. Arata explained. I never heard of something like that. The Hokage said. It's not very common. Perhaps 1 in 100 sensor types does it. Mostly if they teach themselves some of their skills. If they have an experienced sensor to teach them, it normally doesn't happen. Tsunade-sama found this anomaly during the Second Shinobi World War because one on her team had that immunity to genjutsu and she wanted to know if it was possible to teach it to others. Arata said. Okay, this is good to know. Well, I guess we will have to postpone the genjutsu test as it is not possible for us right now to test if Dark Phoenix can break genjutsu. Perhaps when it becomes more pressing I will let Kurenai test him. Just to satisfy my curiosity. What is your strongest genjutsu? He asked Naruto. Illusion art. Infinite darkness. Naruto answered. Isn't that a jutsu of the Nadaime Hokage? Arata asked. It is. We will have to talk about how you learned that jutsu, Dark Phoenix. For now, I think it is time to examine your ninjutsu. I would like to have a presentation of 5 of your strongest jutsu to see what you can do, and then you will fight against Asuma. The Hokage ordered. Can I have an oath that nobody talks about those ninjutsu? I trust you that you chose trustworthy people to watch this test, but 2 of my jutsus will tell them exactly just who I am. Naruto said. The Hokage was surprised at that request. Could Naruto know his father's most prized techniques? Okay. Urata, Asuma, if I am right about which jutsu's Dark Phoenix intends to show us, that oath will be necessary. I make it an S-rank secret to keep quiet about them until I give you permission to talk about them. Understood. Both said. Naruto nodded and took out a tri-pronged kunai from his pouch on his back. He threw it at the training post and vanished in a flash of yellow, reappearing at the kunai and showing a blue spiraling orb into the training post. Rasengan, he said and showed the ball through the wood as if it was butter. The Yondaime's jutsus, Urata said shocked. Flying Thunder God and Rasengan. Asuma gave a very good impression of a goldfish. He never had even suspected that the Yondaime could have had a son. That seemed to be the only plausible explanation for this boy to know those jutsus. Naruto flashed back to his original position and went through a series of hand seals. Water release. Water dragon bullet. He said and manipulated water from the river into a water dragon that hit the training post, which already had a hole from the Rasengan. The post was blown away from the powerful jutsu. Naruto waited until the water had settled down and went through his next series of hand seals. Wind release. Twister's fury. He shouted and made 3 tornadoes that blew towards the river and sucked up the water, making them even more dangerous. Then Naruto made his last hand seal. Shadow clone jutsu. He said and created 50 shadow clones. Shit, was Asuma's only comment. The Hokage was very impressed. He wouldn't have thought that Naruto had that kind of strong ninjutsus in his repertoire. He would be a force to be reckoned with in the future. This only made it more imperative to keep the boy in the village. He needed to choose a good Jonin sensei with whom the boy could bond. It was only one real option there. While Naruto would only stay a genin for 6 months with skills like his, those months needed to be used to start positive bonds to the village. He couldn't take care of that through his teammates. He would be paired with Sasuke Uchiha. Naruto had said himself he had intended to do that to make sure the team passed, and Sakura Haruno. He hoped it would be okay, but perhaps he should ask Naruto about his opinion about Sakura first. He didn't want to anger him even more than he already was. The following fight with Asuma showed that Naruto had a wide range of ninjutsu he could use. Especially his use of replacement and body flicker was fantastic. Asuma didn't manage to get a hit in as Naruto changed places so fast. Together with his speed, he could honestly say Naruto was high Jonin level in ninjutsu. He knew how to do the jutsus and when to use them in a fight. Finally, he gave both the signal to stop. Damn it. To have to work like that against a kid his age, I really should start training more. Asuma commented. He had been spammed with clones and tricked by transformations. Mixed with the constantly moving Naruto and his higher level elemental jutsus, it was damn hard to get the kid. If he would use his other skills, Asuma didn't doubt he would be able to go up with Jonin in a few months of real missions. He had noticed that while the kid was good, he made mistakes that someone who had been on 100 missions or so wouldn't make. This meant this kid was a rookie. His opinion rose even more after that revelation. Let him do a few C rank and B rank missions and he will be ready to become Jonin. There were a few rookie mistakes that you only get corrected through experience. You should, for example, not wait to see if your jutsu really hit an opponent and neglect your surroundings. Your sensor ability helped you out there, but you should have been more on guard in those situations. Asuma told Naruto, who nodded. I will remember it next time, Asuma. He replied. Okay, the next part is Arata's specialty. I would like a bit more about your knowledge in poisons. The Hokage said. Naruto nodded and went over to Arata. Meanwhile, Asuma talked to his father. He is really good. How did you train him and where? I wouldn't have thought you could hide the Yondaime's son for 12 years. Asuma asked. Well, even I don't know how he trained. I didn't know he was this strong before he told me some days ago when he brought back the forbidden scroll that Mizuki had stolen. The Hokage answered. You want to tell me that kid learned all that on his own? Where would he get the jutsus? Asuma asked. And why didn't you teach him? I would have thought he would have got special training regarding his father's enemies. I wanted to, but the political situation after the Kyuubi attack was extremely shaky. We had to fear that Iwa or Kumo would use our weakness to kill him if they knew who he was. So I hid him away. I couldn't have the villagers talk about him even existing. If he had got special training, people would have asked why. And I didn't want to let Danzo or one of the other idiots know about him. The civilians would have pestered me with the CRA nonsense, even if he doesn't have a bloodline limit, made marriage proposals for their daughters to get more power, and similar things would have happened through the ninja clans that would have fought to raise him to increase their power. The Hokage explained. That makes sense. But it is fishy that he could get this strong on his own with nobody noticing. Asuma admitted. Indeed. I will have a long talk with him how he managed it, but I guess he will keep a lot secret. There are certain reasons he informed me about his skills a few days ago, but they are classified. Now let's see what Arata says about his knowledge about poisons. And then I will ask him to show us some of his seals. He said he was a seal master, so I am curious what he can do. Asuma just nodded. Okay. I think that will do for now, Dark Phoenix. You have a very good foundation in your knowledge. If you continue your studies there, you should reach proficiency in a year or so. Arata said. So what is your verdict? The Hokage asked. He has good knowledge about poisonous plants and animals from which he gets his ingredients for the poisons he uses. His techniques to mix those poisons are good. But his knowledge is limited to paralyzing and lethal poisons. If he wants to go further in the area, he needs to branch out. I estimate he is a solid high Chunin level in his skills here. For his age, that is still impressive. I don't know many ninjas that are all-rounders like he is. He should be able to take B-rank missions without too much problem in an experienced team as support. Arata said. The Hokage nodded. There was no way he would let Naruto take A-rank missions in the near future, even if he was skilled. But his team would need to be trained properly so they could send them on C ranks after a short time. Okay. Then if I didn't miss anything, only Fuinjutsu is left. The Hokage said. Naruto nodded enthusiastically. He loved Fuinjutsu. He took out some seals he had brought with him to show the Hokage. Okay. These are some of the seals I prepared to show you, Hokage-sama. I think they are some of the most useful in the field. This is a modified explosive seal. It first sends a chakra wave out that imitates killing intent, then the explosion goes off. The intention is to briefly paralyze an opponent with the Ki to keep them within the range of the seal. The next one is a combination of a storage seal and an explosive seal. The weapons stored in the storage part are shot out by the explosive part and can surprise an opponent who doesn't expect to have to dodge weapons. The seal can be prepared in two ways. First, you trigger it with your own chakra from a certain distance, or second, you involve a perimeter seal that reacts to foreign chakra. It has a range about 20 meters. He then took out another type of seal. This is a modified chakra storage seal. You can store chakra of a certain type, like water or fire chakra, in here and release it when you need it. You would only have to meld the chakra into a jutsu after that. Do you mean, with those seals ninja could use jutsus of an element they normally can't use? Asuma asked. Yes. Of course they would need to know the hand seals for the jutsu and meld the chakra, but the elemental manipulation would be taken care of. Naruto said. Fantastic. That would make fights much easier. You would be able to prevent being caught at a total disadvantage. With my element wind and knowledge in fire jutsus, I would have problems with water types. If I had some earth seals, I could take care of that problem. Asuma mused. But how do you load them? Don't you need the elemental chakra first to charge them? That was a problem in the beginning until I came up with chakra converter seals. I am a primary wind type with a secondary water affinity. So I would be hard pressed against earth techniques if I didn't recognize the jutsu first, which still takes some time for me. I wanted to have a way to use lightning jutsus. So I worked on a seal that would change my wind chakra to lightning chakra. Took me some time to develop it, but after 3 months I had it. And I found out that by using the seals regularly I developed a lightning affinity as my third affinity. I think it is comparable with the Sharingan training a user to use jutsus of all kinds as it can copy them. Naruto reported proudly. Are you going to sell some of your seals? Asuma asked. Perhaps. I'm not sure yet. Naruto said. He had thought about making money through selling his seals, but who would buy them if they knew he made them? And he didn't know how it would work through a proxy. Perhaps the Hokage could help him there. Okay. I see you really know your seals. To see how good you are overall we would have to wait for Jiraiya to return from his travels. He's out of the village most of the time maintaining his spy network. The Hokage said. Naruto nodded. He knew that Jiraiya of the Sannin had been his dad's Jonin sensei and was a seal master, the only one the village had at the moment besides himself, and he needed to be evaluated to be acknowledged first. I think we are done here. Dark Phoenix, I want to see you in my office in 2 hours. Urata, thanks for your help, you're dismissed. Asuma, please come to my office in 4 hours, we will then finalize the new Genin teams with the other Jonin senseis. 4 hours after the test, the Hokage and the 9 Jonins that would take a team this year, even Kakashi had come on time after the Hokage had threatened his Ika books. Good, now that we are all here, we will go over the teams that will be announced to the new Genin next Monday. The Hokage then proceeded to read the teams to the Jonin. I would like for Genma to take Team 1, Aoba, you get Team 2, Inoichi, you get Team 3, Choma, you have Team 4. Isuna, Team 5, Makiko, you have Team 6. Now, Kakashi gets Team 7, Kurenai, you have Team 8, and Asuma gets Team 10. The Hokage informed them. They nodded. If you have any questions about your team, ask Iruka Yumino, he taught the class over the last 2 years. All except Kakashi are dismissed. The Hokage said. The Jonin left the office after bowing. What did you want to talk about with me, Hokage-sama? Kakashi asked. You have the most important team of the whole year this time, Kakashi. I know that the council will force you to pass the team for Sasuke Uchiha, but I don't want you to play favorites. This is a matter of village security. The Hokage said while activating the privacy seals in the room. Anbu, please wait outside while I brief Kakashi. He ordered. The 4 hidden Anbu left the room. This seems to be really important, Hokage-sama. Kakashi analyzed. It is. Do you know who Naruto Uzumaki really is? The Hokage asked. Yes, he is Naruto Namikaze, Minato sensei's son. Kakashi answered, nodding, his eye looking dead serious now. Correct. I suspected you knew. 2 days ago I found out that Naruto knows about his parents and the fox. He is no genin. He should have normally already been Jonin by now. But with the sabotage and hatred the civilian council shows him, he hid it. I had Asuma test Naruto today in a disguise. The boy is a prodigy. He is Jonin level in ninjutsu, fuinjutsu, weapons and taijutsu. We don't really know his level in genjutsu as he is immune to lower level ones because he is a sensor and has his body covered in a chakra layer that blocks invading chakra. A medic informed me that sometimes happens with self-taught sensors. Obviously Tsunade found out about that phenomenon. He knows basics of poisons and is really smart. The problem is that thanks to the idiots on the council Naruto has next to no real connection with the village. He sees me as trustworthy and likes me, but I think the only other ones that could be said about are the Ichirakus. Nobody else in the entire village. Naruto confessed that he would have run away long ago if he had had a chance. Now I know I am old. If I die and Naruto doesn't get new bonds, he will run. I give him a year at most to be able to not be caught by the Anbu anymore if they were sent to get him back. He won't let the council screw him anymore. And Naruto has inherited both his parents' talent. He is the heir of the Uzumaki, Namikaze and Senju clans. And he is more talented than even Itachi was. I don't have to tell you that we can't let him go somewhere else. I want you to train your team properly, Kakashi. No being late more than half an hour. Naruto hates his teammates, but will accept them until he can take the Chunin exams in 6 months. So the only person he would willingly connect to, if he is treated properly, are you, his Jonin sensei. Naruto is important for the future of the village. If he leaves, the most probable destination he could go to is Kumo. They treat their Jinchuriki properly now. I don't have to tell you that it would be a catastrophe for Konoha if Kumo got Naruto in their ranks. He knows both Rasengan and the Flying Thunder God Jutsu of his father. He is probably a Fuinjutsu master and his ninjutsu is impressive. He has a wind affinity with a secondary water affinity and a developed lightning affinity from him developing a chakra converter seal that turned his wind chakra in lighting chakra and then training lightning jutsus. Both his normal affinities are trained. I don't know how he managed to hide his training, he was only willing to tell me he found a secret place where he lives now and trains. He also found scrolls and other things there. You have the next 6 months to get Naruto a new bond to the village. If you can, more than that, make sure nobody screws him over on missions in the village and get the other 2 ready for C-rank missions ASAP. Sasuke shouldn't be a problem. The boy wants to get stronger and you should be able to break him out of his superiority ideas. I think the bigger problem will be Sakura. The girl didn't get good marks on her physical exams. The reason she became top kunoichi is that the written test was a big part of the exams and that she has perfect chakra control due to her small reserves. If you have to break her, but Team 7 has to get strong soon. The Hokage impressed the importance on Kakashi. Kakashi was really surprised. He hadn't known that Naruto was that strong, but he could understand that he had a strong dislike for the villagers. He had saved him more than once from mobs when Naruto was younger. I understand, Hokage-sama. I will think of something to teach Naruto to keep him interested. I can also tell him more about his parents if he wants to. Do you know if he can use Kyuubi's chakra? Kakashi asked. No, he can't. But he can suppress it really well so far. He thinks that if he is strong enough on his own he doesn't have to rely on the dangerous chakra of the fox. He knows that he can't trust the fox. He had met it after he found out that he was the Jinchuriki for Kyuubi, but other than trying to get Naruto to let him out he didn't try anything so far. And Naruto is too smart to not know that if he lets the fox out, he will lose himself. The Hokage explained. Good. Because I wouldn't know how to teach him that. I will make sure Naruto will start to be better connected with some of his peers. I think I could get at least Asuma to arrange team sparring sessions if his team passes, which I think they will. I haven't seen any version of an Inoshika Cho team that failed the Genin exams. Perhaps Kurenai would also do it. Her team looks like they could pass too. Kakashi said. I trust you, Kakashi. We have 6 months until Naruto makes Chunin. By the way, get back to your old level in Anbu and if possible surpass it. At the moment you are my only real option as a successor. The only others would be Jiraiya and Tsunade and I can't imagine that Tsunade would come back to the village and I fear what Jiraiya would do as Hokage. And if neither of you take the hat it will probably go to Danzo. I understand, Hokage-sama. Kakashi said. Good. You are dismissed, Kakashi. The Hokage said. Kakashi left the office. The day of the team placements was there and Naruto for the first time wore his new outfit. He had long black pants that were taped with dark red bandages. He wore a dark red mesh shirt under a dark gray shirt with 3/4 sleeves and a hood. He wore a dark red belt with 2 pouches on his back. On both of his thighs were pouches for shuriken and senbon that were strapped over black bandages. Over the shirt he wore a dark red vest with pockets specially made to store scrolls and small containers for different things. Naruto kept his poisons there. He had dark red gloves with metal plates on the back, in which he had sealed his tanto and his bow staff. The hood of his shirt hung over his vest on his back. He would only put it on for missions where his bright hair would be a hindrance. He looked in the mirror and was happy with how he looked now. He finally looked like a real shinobi. He turned off the lights of his home and walked up the stairs. He made sure that he was alone in the alley and then left through the hidden entrance. Once the wall was back in position, he jumped up on the roof and went to the academy. He reached the classroom and took a seat in the back. Only two others were there. Hinata Hyuga and Shino Aburame. Shino gave him a short nod and Hinata turned red again when he smiled at her. Naruto didn't really understand why she always turned red, but as she was never mean like the other students, he liked her. Shino just shook his head, seeing the display of Naruto and Hinata. Naruto was really dense sometimes. He knew Naruto wasn't as bad and stupid as he supposedly was. His allies had told him that Naruto had excellent chakra control and intentionally messed up things. He had observed Naruto after finding out that and came to the conclusion that Naruto wanted to stay at the bottom of the class for some reason. He didn't know his reason, but he respected Naruto's privacy. Hinata was really hard-pressed to not faint when Naruto walked into the class. She had been really happy when he had passed his exams. Many had thought he would fail them. Now he wore some new clothes and he looked really good in them. He obviously had hidden his muscular body under the old, bulky, orange jumpsuit. His new clothes sat tighter on his upper body and didn't leave much to imagination. How could a 12-year-old boy look that good? Now the other students began filling the room. Some were surprised to see Naruto in a new outfit, but most of them ignored him. Though some girls gave him appreciative looks. Then the daily stampede occurred. Sakura and Ino raced each other to the classroom to decide who would be allowed to sit next to Sasuke. Stupid really. They were kunoichi now, they should act like it. Once they had entered the room they fought who had won. Naruto had enough. He had watched that embarrassment of kunoichis too long. He quickly threw a senbon at each of them and hit both their thighs. They looked shocked, then they had problems moving. What the? Ino asked. Then she couldn't move her lips anymore. Finally they are quiet. Naruto mumbled. Only Shino and Hinata had noticed that he had thrown the senbons at Ino and Sakura and were impressed with his accuracy and the obviously paralyzing agent on the senbons. When Iruka came into the class, Ino and Sakura were still paralyzed. Naruto mentally counted down for the poison he used to lose its effect. It should only hold for 30 more seconds. It was only meant to paralyze for 5 minutes. More than enough time in a one-on-one fight to take out your opponent. What happened here? Iruka asked. Well, Ino and Sakura fought who would sit next to Sasuke, then they were hit with a senbon each and were paralyzed. A girl informed Iruka. Who did this? Iruka asked. Naruto raised his hand. Don't worry, the effect only lasts for 5 minutes, Iruka-sensei. They should be back to normal in 3, 2, 1, now. Naruto said. True to Naruto's words, Ino and Sakura stumbled when their muscles reacted again. In 2 minutes they are back to normal. Naruto said disinterestedly. Why did you do that, Naruto? Iruka asked sternly. They were too loud and an embarrassment for every kunoichi that takes her profession serious. I just wanted to show them what can happen if they don't keep an eye on their environment. They didn't even think to pull out the senbons as soon as they hit them. That would have shortened the time the poison worked. Naruto said without remorse. The whole class looked shocked. Naruto had never behaved like this. He had always been a goofball. Not this serious. The most surprised was Iruka, who started to have doubts about their assessment of Naruto's skills. Over the years he had lost his hatred for Naruto. He had understood that Naruto wasn't the fox and never treated him worse than his other students. He even admired how the boy persevered despite the hatred of the villagers. Nonetheless, it's wrong to attack your comrades, Uruka said. That wasn't an attack, that was a rescue mission for the ears of those that have sensitive hearing and easily get headaches. If I would have wanted to attack them, they would be dead now. Naruto countered. I would just have had to use a deadly poison instead of a paralyzing one or aimed at a vital point. With their reaction times, they would be dead before help would have arrived. Uruka couldn't say anything against that. Naruto was right. He could have easily killed them. He wondered why the boy had changed so dramatically. Well, sit down, Ino and Sakura, we will start with the team placements, Uruka said. Grumbling, the two girls took seats, ironically on both sides of Sasuke. Uruka gave his class a speech how proud he was of them for graduating and how the real life of ninjas now waited for them. He told them to do their best and then proceeded to read out the teams. Team 7, Naruto Uzumaki, Sakura Haruno. With that, Sakura's head crashed onto the table and Ino mocked her, and Sasuke Uchiha. Sakura cheered. Take that, Ino pig. True love conquers all. She shouted loudly only to be hit with a senbon again. This time in her shoulder. She turned around to shout at Naruto only to be paralyzed again. Don't worry, that will take 5 minutes to wear off again. You can continue, Uruka-sensei, Naruto said, shaking his head at Sakura's idiocy. He had told her to first take out the senbon. Uruka just shook his head and wondered about the display of accuracy from Naruto. That point was where normally a vein was. Did he know anatomy that well? He hadn't shown anything like that before. Team 8, Hinata Hyuga, Kiba Inuzuka and Shino Aburame, Uruka said, and the three looked at each other. Team 9 is still active, so Team 10 are Shikamaru Nara, Choji Akamichi and Ino Yamanaka. What? Why do I get the lazy and the one who only eats when forehead girl gets to be on Sasuke's team? She ranted, only to be hit with another senbon into her hip. She grabbed the senbon and pulled it out and turned angrily to Naruto. But she couldn't even start her rant because she was paralyzed. Better. 3 minutes, at least she remembered to take out the senbon quickly. Naruto commented. Naruto, please refrain from paralyzing your comrades. Uruka admonished him. Why should I? And I only use the term comrades very loosely with most of the class. Naruto said. You don't honestly expect me to treat them any different than they did me all those years. If you did, forget it. I have had it with the shit, Naruto stated. Uruka was worried. Naruto clearly bore a strong dislike for most of the class. It was understandable, but why did he show it now? Was the fox taking over? Ha! What could a dead last like you do to us? The son of a shop owner that always kicked Naruto out asked. Naruto answered by vanishing from his seat and holding a kunai to the boy's throat. Don't underestimate me. You know nothing about me. I dare you to live one day of my life. You will want to kill yourself. You are not even close to strong enough to get through, Naruto said in a low voice. Naruto, that's enough, Uruka shouted. He asked for it. Naruto answered and vanished again to return to his seat. In his seat, Sasuke was seething. How could the dead last have those abilities? Only he, and Uchiha should have them. He was the rookie of the year. Normally Sakura would have yelled at Naruto to stop trying to be cool, but she couldn't, the poison still worked. Then Ino's paralysis stopped. She first wanted to yell at him, but thought better of it and sat down. Twice having been hit with senbons and being paralyzed was enough. And Naruto would obviously do it again if he felt they were too loud. Half an hour after the other teams had been taken by their Jonin Sensei's Team 7 still sat in the classroom. Sasuke was busy glaring at Naruto, Sakura was mooning over Sasuke and Naruto was drawing in a notebook. He was working on a new seal and everything was better than having to deal with his so-called teammates. Then the door opened and a silver-haired man with gravity-defying hair came in. Naruto looked up. He recognized the man. He was the Jonin he had copied the shadow clone jutsu from. He was Kakashi Hatake, one of the best Jonin in the village. His dad's old student. It seemed like the Hokage had kept his word and given him a sensei who wouldn't hate him for the fox. Kakashi had to know about sealing, and perhaps he even knew that he was the Yondaime's son. My first impression, you are boring. Meet me at the roof in 5 minutes. He said and disappeared in a cloud of smoke. Sasuke and Sakura stood up and walked out of the room. Naruto waited a moment and then followed. If there were traps on the way, the two idiots would trigger them. He would stay alert. It was always better to be on guard, and over the years it had become second nature to him. He heard cursing in front of him. Obviously Kakashi's lateness had had a reason. True to his suspicions, Sakura was trapped in a sling of ninja wire around her feet and dangling from the ceiling. Sasuke was pinned to the wall with 2 shuriken through his sleeves. You really should listen better. I told you to always be on guard. There were only a few reasons our sensei would be late, and preparing a small test with traps was one of them. He said. He threw a kunai at the wire that held Sakura in the air and made her fall to the ground. Get the bastard freed and follow me. He said and walked on. On the way he lazily disabled 2 more traps. Then they reached the door to the roof. Naruto carefully checked for more traps on the door and found none. He opened it a little bit, only for Sakura shoving him out of the way, being impatient. She shouted they would be late. Naruto threw himself down when he felt projectiles coming at them. Sasuke, who had seen that there would be traps to expect, followed Naruto's example. Both avoided being hit. Naruto rolled out of the line of fire and was ready to defend himself in case of an attack. He saw that Sakura was pierced by 5 senbons and whining. Sasuke behind him was also ready for another attack. Well, my second impression is, we need to work on your speed in disabling or avoiding traps. You are late. You needed 6.5 minutes to get here. But I have to acknowledge that you at least got here as a team. Even if the girl shouldn't have got that impatient. Better being late than dead. If I was an enemy I could have killed you easily. Which leads us to my next question, what was your first mistake? Kakashi asked, looking sternly at them. Taking the route you expected us to take. We could have avoided this by using another route. The best way would have been if we had used chakra to stick to the wall and climbed up here. But as 2 of us don't know this exercise and we are supposed to be a team, we had to take the only other route. Naruto said. Correct. That exercise will be one of the first things you will learn during your time as genin. That is if you manage to become genin. Kakashi said, smiling. What do you mean, if we manage to become genin? We graduated, so we are genin. Sakura said. No, not yet, but I will tell you about that later. Sit down. Kakashi instructed them. He pointed at 3 benches in front of him. The 3 sat down with Naruto checking the underside of his bench for traps but not finding any. Kakashi nodded appreciatively at Naruto's action. For now I want you to give me a short introduction of yourselves. Name, age, likes, dislikes, hobbies and dreams. Pinky, you start. Kakashi ordered. Sakura looked confused. How should we do that, sensei? Couldn't you start to give an example? She asked. What does shinobi rule number 3 say? Blackie. Kakashi said, ignoring Sakura's question. A ninja has to always follow a direct order of his superior. Sasuke answered. Correct. Kakashi answered. Sasuke was impressed with this jonin. He clearly knew what he did and had a no-nonsense attitude. Perhaps this would work out well. He would see how strong he was. So, Pinky, I gave you a direct order and I expect you to follow my orders or you should just quit being a ninja. Sakura nodded, intimidated by Kakashi. Yes, sensei. My name is Sakura Haruno. I am 12 years old. The thing I like, more the person I like is. She looked at Sasuke and blushed. My hobby is. She again looked at Sasuke and blushed harder and giggled. My dream is. She looked at Sasuke and squealed. Your dislike? Kakashi asked, annoyed. He just had to get a fangirl. Ino Pig and Naruto, she shouted. We will have to work on your attitude. Shinobi rule number 25, Blondie. A ninja never shows his emotions. Naruto recited calmly. Correct. Kakashi said. Sasuke was surprised. He didn't think Naruto had paid attention in class. And then his new skills. Why was Naruto so different than before? He would find it out. Sakura huffed. She had the right to show her love to Sasuke. Okay. Next is Blackie. Kakashi said. Sasuke obviously disliked the nickname but kept quiet. Sasuke Uchiha, 12 years old. I like nothing in particular and have many things I dislike. My hobby is training. I don't have a dream, more of an ambition. I will resurrect the Uchiha clan and I will kill a certain somebody. He stated. Sakura had hearts in her eyes, thinking Sasuke was so cool. Naruto rolled his eyes. The emo had no reason to be all egoistical and full of hate. He was treated like a pampered prince in the village. Kakashi had expected something like that. Okay. Next Blondie. Kakashi continued. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. I am 12 years old. I like the old man and Ichirakus. I dislike most of the villagers, especially those that can't distinguish a scroll and a kunai. My hobby is training and gardening. My dream is to become the strongest ninja ever and show this village just how much they screwed up. Naruto said. He really is different from what his file said, but Hokage-sama warned me. If we don't get him out of the darkness, he could become a problem for the village. Not that I can blame him. Kakashi thought. Okay. My name is Kakashi Hatake, I'm 26 years old. My likes and dislikes are none of your concern for now. I have many hobbies and my dream, I never really thought about it. He told them. The only thing we found out was his name and his age. Sasuke and Sakura thought. I know that voice from somewhere. Naruto thought, trying to place the voice of his sensei. Now that introductions are over, I will come to the part that you aren't genin yet. There is a rule in the village that all genin have to be confirmed by their respective jonin senseis. Each sensei gives his team a test. And from the 27 genin that pass the graduation exams in your year, only 9 will be accepted as genin. That means this test has a probability of failure of 67%. Kakashi pointed out. What? But what was the meaning of the exams then? Sakura protested. There was no way in hell she would give up being on the same team as Sasuke. That was to weed out the hopeless cases. The only one that has a say if you become genin or not am I. Kakashi said, giving an imposing figure with his arms stemmed at his sides and looking down at them. Naruto's memory finally connected the voice and the pose. Dog, he questioned mentally. Dog had been an ANBU that had often protected him when he was younger. Naruto really hoped his sensei was his old Anbu guard. He had really liked Dog, especially as the man had often given him some sweets to help him over the shock after attacks. Kakashi handed them a piece of paper with information. The test will be tomorrow morning at 7 at Training Ground 3. Bring all your equipment. Oh, and you better don't eat breakfast or you will just throw up. Kakashi informed them. Then Kakashi disappeared in a cloud of smoke again. Sasuke stood up and walked away, Sakura closely behind him to try and get a date with him. Naruto wondered how long it would take for her to be killed on a mission like that. He decided preparation was necessary and used the body flicker to get to Training Ground 3. He spent 3 hours inspecting the training ground to be prepared for the next day. He didn't know if his so-called teammates would remember the lesson about knowing the terrain before a fight, but he did know that they wouldn't listen if he told them about it. Naruto then went into the woods to a river where he knew tasty fish could be caught. He caught 3 fishes for his dinner, went to his field to get some fresh vegetables and then went to prepare his food. A small campfire and an hour of cooking later, he had grilled fish and roasted vegetables. He ate and then extinguished the fire. On his way home he took to the roofs to avoid the glares from the villagers. He also didn't want to be found by messengers of the council. They would surely bitch about his behavior in class. Well, let them bitch. He was a ninja under the command of the Hokage, they had no power over him. Kakashi had observed Naruto after the meeting was over. He was positively surprised that he went to the training ground where the test would be to get an idea which environment he would have to work with. After that he caught himself some fish and disappeared somewhere else. Kakashi let him go. It wouldn't be good if Naruto thought he followed him. He needed to gain Naruto's trust to help him. From his estimation the team meeting had gone well enough. Naruto was good and knew how to act as a ninja. Sasuke needed to get over his complexes. The best way to get there would be to practically isolate him from the village until the Chunin exams. So he would have to carefully choose the D-rank missions his team did. No missions inside the village where the villagers could show their bias against Naruto and towards Sasuke. But at least Sasuke had the necessary skill to be a ninja. Attitudes could be corrected over time. Getting skills that should have been taught in the academy to an appropriate level was harder. Sakura would have to go through hell. She didn't consider her surroundings, she was loud, had a superiority complex towards Naruto and was a fangirl. Really bad combination. He would see her skills in a battle situation tomorrow. But he didn't expect much.